How's that? No, Commander, it had gotten... No, don't start. I think it was on my end. We good? Chuck? Boom. Okay. Yeah, it turned off. I don't know. All those settings we put in there the other day, Chuck, turned off. So I used Skype last night. I videoed Skype. I wonder if that turned it off. I have no idea. But we are live now. Good Lord have mercy. It's been an entertaining day today at the Troll Dens. It's the Twitch Elves. Yeah, no kidding. How's it going, DM-M5 Commander? Yeah, so we were binding away, and as some of you all who have kind of followed Troll Lord's mess, I spent a good chunk of time supplying the company with extra parts for the equipment, the binder, the cutter, blades, and the little friction arm, whatever the hell the thing's called, paper, tape, all kinds of stuff, expecting the supply lines to be, the supply channels to be kind of interrupted for the next several months. Well, that's been going pretty good. We've managed to keep, everything rolling. Equipment's broken down a couple of times. The binder's broken down a couple of times. We repaired it and put new parts in it, get it rolling. What I did not anticipate, however, was today's entertaining challenge. The compressor on the binder went out. It was smoking, and we had let it run out of oil. It's completely our fault. And now it's old. It's 5 years old, but no reason for it to have just up and died. Little smoke's coming out of the air filter. So I'm guessing she ran out of oil, burned the motor out, and now the binder's down. So we went to, after much experimentation, determined that it cannot be fixed and are ordering a new one. Interestingly, the compressor that's on there now, the expense is about a tenth the cost of the entire binder itself. Has to be imported from, I don't know where, but I suspect China. And with the trade war, the tariffs, the tariffs on his equipment are through the roof, which has made the price just crazy expensive. So the guy who helps me service the machine, they have kind of a workaround. So we have ordered the new binder, or not the new binder. We have ordered the new compressor. It will be here Monday, presumably, and we will get the print shop up and rolling. But that was the better part of our morning. Todd and I hammering away at that thing, trying to get the old beast to come back alive. We're approaching 100,000 books on that binder, which is pretty cool. I know it's like 88 or 86 last time I looked at it. So super impressed with this binder. It's done a king's job. A manly job. What is that? It's from Blade Runner. What does he say? You've done a something job, sir. You've done a... Shit, what is that line? I can't. It's the first Blade Runner movie. I don't think it's Roy Batty that says it. I can't remember. Dang it! So, I'm gonna have to go watch Blade Runner now. No, it's the detective. It's the detective that is sort of working with Deckard. You've done a something job, sir. I can't remember what he says. Now I'm gonna have to go watch Blade Runner again to see what Edward. Yes, that's the actor who says it. Grape X, the compressor went out on the binder, and we're having to fix it. It took us a while to track down what was happening and why it was happening. I have not broken. I have the new camera. Actually, I don't have a new camera yet. I have a camera. You've done a man's job. That's it right there. Yeah, the commander found it. Excellent. I absolutely love Blade Runner. One of my all-time favorite. What is he saying? What is it?
Finished.
Well, I want to flick you with it all, but there's the...
It's too bad she won't live.
Oh, man, is that a good movie. Good Lord.
Again, who does?
Lord of mercy. All right, Commander, you got me sidetracked into Blade Runner this time. So, I skipped over it. Great. Sounds about right. Yeah, it's a great scene. The whole movie is a great scene, actually. And I got to say, the second Blade Runner, whatever the hell it's called, Blade Runner 240? I don't know, whatever it's called, was a fantastic Probably the best sequel I've ever seen, with the only exception that I can think of offhand would be Aliens, as a sequel to Alien. And Aliens was just a fantastic sequel, and the Blade Runner, whatever it's called, 2040. Yeah, dude, Decimus, if you haven't, go watch it. I cannot recommend it enough. They do a really good job picking up the story, a few years later, and then they don't change any of it. They don't, rewrite any of it. They don't redo nothing. It's just the story is picked up. Very cool, very subtle. And I think Ryan Gosling's the guy playing, kind of stepping up as the star role. But oh man, is it good? I would probably give Aliens as the better sequel, because Aliens really did it well. They took the concept of the first one and really made its own story about it. So the two movies are you can watch them completely separately, and you're fine. And they didn't kind of go down the same genre, didn't redo anything, didn't try to explain too much, didn't go overboard with any of it. It just, Aliens is a fantastic movie. And the Blade Runner is too. I completely lost my train of thought. But we're actually here to not discuss Blade Runner. Surprisingly enough, we're here to discuss this week's GM's Tricks of the Trade. This is our 59th edition of GM's Tricks of the Trade. And tonight we are talking about managing combat without props. I'm a huge fan of chaotic combats. I'm a huge fan of lots of blood, gore, and dice rolling at the table. Anything to kind of propel everybody into this kind of whatever, not an existential experience, but it gives it a little bit, a little bit more grit to it. It makes everybody kind of focus. And even beyond that, I just enjoy it. So it's fun for me. But lots of combats. And obviously, there are innumerable tools to help manage combats in role-playing games. Not only do you have your character sheets and your dice that kind of, set the stage, but there's battle maps and miniatures and, printable terrain and purchasable terrain from Fat Dragon or Dwarven Forge or whatever companies. And you've got companies like Axe and Shield put all kinds of distance markers out, all kinds of things that you can use to help kind of organize the combat as it unfolds. And with the VTT stuff, and I've only looked at a little bit of this, so I don't know too much about it. I've kind of watched 3 or 4 videos. But with the VTT stuff, you've got movements and maps all set in there, and it's even controlled a little bit more. You got even more props. You can. I think my favorite prop, and it's really the only one I've seen much of, is the torch, where your character's walking with a light, and it lights up those parts of the dungeon that you could see, and the others are in shadows or what have you. So that's kind of cool. I like it all of it. It certainly is taking the game in a new and bold direction, which is cool. I like it, but that doesn't mean you can't do it without the props. It doesn't mean that you can't have a really kick-ass fun time rattling everybody's cages and just keeping it in the, what do you call all the time, Tim? Theater of the imagination, something? I don't know, mind? I don't know, whatever. Just keeping it in the realm of the imagination. Bifford, one of us. KFC, one of us. Casey, one of us. I did it last Saturday, Bifford. I could take it no more. Friday, actually. Or maybe it was Thursday. I don't know. It was last week. I got a gigantic theater of the mind. There it is. I got a gigantic bucket of, 22 pieces of chicken. We ate dinner, and then the rest of it sat in the refrigerator, and I ate it for the next 3 days until my wife threw it away. She said I could have no more slowly rotting KFC. But man, if you haven't had cold, original KFC, you've not enjoyed a treat. Oh, Lord, there it goes. I'm going to have to get a Dr. Pepper. Let's see, what are we rolling up there? Streamlabs is putting up the link tree, which is cool. Gives you all kind of links that you can bebop around on the troll sites. And then, of course, subscribe over to something or the other. I don't know what that is. Our newsletter. That's very important. Subscribe to the newsletter. But we're here to talk about at GM's Tricks of the Trade. I'm Stephen Chenault, and if you're just joining us, please give us a follow. We appreciate any and all supports you can throw our way. On an RPG topic, we were discussing monster book layouts, and I was saying how I like the second edition Monsters Compendium concept of one monster a page, and I think that a digital version of the same these days would be great. Print out the pages with the monsters you need for a session, with all the info neatly on one page monster. Did TLG ever consider this as a concept? I think it would make a great PDF book. Yeah, we certainly have. We did a compendium for the Monsters and Treasures 5th edition, and we actually looked at printing as a go on retro, printing a page per, printing a page per monster. But some of them are very short, and you end up with 3 or 4 paragraphs and half a blank page or something like that. And in a print product, that's not conceivable, but like you're talking about in a digital, it's very conceivable. There's no reason to not do it other than time. You have to go back in and relay everything out. And it's not a monstrous endeavor. I mean, it probably would take Peter or myself just a couple of days, because I'm relatively certain that you can go in with InDesign and do page breaks and throw everything to the next page. So I think it's very doable. It's something we've talked about here before. But, man, I tell you, with the amount of workload that we already got, if I jam another project into everybody's workload, I might get somewhat murdered. But it's one of those things that would be kind of cool, because you're right. There isn't any reason to have on the digital anything on the back, anything, just print it and go. That's all you need to do. Yeah, it's a cool concept. I love the concept. I actually really love the concept too of hyperlinking everything in those things, so that you can bebop around you can have your PDF open and just kind of, click and hop over. If a vampire has X monsters, what do they get, wolves or whites or something? You just click it and you go to the wolf, and there it is. That would be kind of cool. Click it back, go to the vampire. I mean, there's just a lot of ways, I think, to make it a little bit better. We've actually, after much what is it? It's not complaining. That's certainly what people aren't doing. Friendly advice. I took a step back a few months ago and began looking at our PDFs in the way because that was on me. I do the final kind of export to PDF and send it to him to get up on the sites. And I was doing it wrong. I wasn't including bookmarks, and I had to get in there and kind of figure out how to make the bookmarks without changing the text itself, because we use obviously the same file for printing that we do for whatchamajigger. And I'm gonna have to do it. I'm just yawning constantly. I gotta break out of Dr. Pepper. Lord have mercy. Alright. But yeah, that is definitely now that's another thing that we're looking at is layers and biffers. I've got to kind of get my head around layers and what it's actually going to do. What it's going to do for the end user. I know that, like on maps, you could show them stuff that doesn't have numbers on it or what have you, or CK information on their GM information. But it's one of those things Peter and I both are going to have to learn how to do. But really, where one of the things that stops TLG's development is I can't, in my head, I won't commit company resources to things that I can't really see a practical use for. And it's much to Tim and Chuck's consternation, because they have to beat me over the head with a 2x4 to make me look beyond what I'm doing. But layers is one of those things. We've talked about it quite a bit, and how to actually make it something that really enhances the play experience. That's kind of what I want to do before we dive into taking all of this time. World Anvil is the perfect example of that. Tim has been working, and a lot of you guys have been working really, really insanely hard to get World Anvil up and running. And the first 4 or 5 months, I think Tim actually just started doing it and not talking to me about it, so that I wouldn't say, well, I got other things to do, type of stuff. And now World Anvil's up, running, and becoming a really nice kind of part of the whole presentation of Aired. We got a little ways to go, but so the PDFs has kind of been on my mind. Those layers, we've talked about it before. That's on my mind. Ways to make the PDF even better before it gets kind of trounced and people are just using online material like World Anvil. Think of it like OHP sheets, base layer, text layer, image layer. You know, that's what we've talked about that a bit here. Chuck and I have, and Tim and I have. But I just can't see at the end of the day, and I need to play it, what the practical application of that is. Someone can choose to print without background and images, and they have text to keep printer ink used down, and also for screen readers. Well, that's true. Now, and with that regard, though, is it easier, and I know we're way off GM's tricks of the trade, but is it easier to make a layered PDF, or is it easier to export that PDF without that material on there? For instance, when we did the digest versions of the Player's Handbook and the Castle Keeper's Guide and all that crap, we just went in and removed the background material, exported to grayscale, and we're done. You know, it takes 20 minutes or so to get a 300-page book out without background text and doomaflotch. So it's one of those things that I've looked at the layers. I haven't learned how to do it, but I need to see in kind of practical application what this is going to bring to all of us, both TLGs, time-wise, and production capacity, and the end user. You can do 2 files, but why have 2 files? Yeah, well, that's just it. That's the other argument, Bifford. And if it's a timing issue, if it's going to take 4 or 5 days to layer everything, then it's worth it to just do the 2 files. It takes 20 minutes. So it boils down into that type of thing. I will. It's probably sometime once we get Egypt mostly knocked out, I'll give you a shout, because that is on my mind. It's been on my mind quite a bit as we slowly shift into the digital, or our drug into the digital by this pandemic, as it is clear that we're not going to get a lot of direction on the way to handle all of this madness. One country does this, another country does that. Some people ignore this, some people ignore that, and we throw 40 years of science out the door or something. I don't know what's going on out there, but clearly chaos is reigning everywhere. So so we're going to be pushed into the digital world, whether we like it or not. There you go. Well, hopefully it'll bring someone over. All right, yeah, so we're doing a $50 giveaway. If we hit 50 viewers today, we did that last week on AMA. We're going to do it again today. Let's see where we land. So let's dive right into GM's Tricks of the Trade. We are talking about managing combat without props. And by that, I mean miniatures, terrain features, battle maps, VTT, fantasy grounds, world anvil, whatever it is. You're just at the table and you're rolling dice and you're running a huge combat. What is affectionately called, I suppose, theater of the mind, and just yes, I do, Tim. I can go all out. It's the placement of the button. There you go. All right. Bookmark this. Let me click that before I lose it, because I will lose it. And I've already lost it. There we go. All right. Let me get that out of there. Get back over here. Yeah, we've been stocking up around here, Pond Dream. We always keep a good chunk of Dr. Pepper on hand. Never run out of that, but we are going to have to be careful. They're claiming some kind of sweetener shortage or aluminum can shortage. I don't know what they're on about, but yeah, that's not acceptable in today's age. That we should run out of Dr. Pepper. I get it, for other stuff, toilet paper, stuff like that, but not Dr. Pepper, not the essentials. We shouldn't be running out of the essentials. All right, so first up on Tricks of the Trade is use the terrain. So I talk about this all the time when you're doing just about anything, overland adventure, description text, setting the mood, setting the pace, all of this stuff. Bring terrain into your game in a huge way and keep it there. And running a combat is no different at all. And it doesn't matter what kind of terrain you're using. Describe it and have it impact the players and the monsters as they come forward into combat. So I use in the examples in the newsletter, trees are going to divide party members. Clots of dirt are going to be flying around as you run through, the loamy soil of the plains, what have you. When you fall, gravel and grit's going to get stuck on your hand or down into the greaves of your armor. Whatever it is, even getting dirt in the eye, anything, use the terrain to your advantage. And really the idea here is to create something of a level of chaos so that when your players are weaving in and out of it, you've got wiggle room to say you just don't see that, or you don't understand that, or all you see is the blood and the leaves and the dirt that are scattering up into your face. It just gives a little bit of confusion with what's going on. Plus, it allows you to manage things to some degree in that you can move characters this direction, move monsters in that direction, or what have you. So just using terrain, describing it, and using it as a weapon is just a really good idea. And the whole idea is that this carries forward into dungeons as well. You don't want to just use it outdoors, when they're crossing the mountain or fighting on the ledge or what have you. But in dungeons too, torches cast shadows, so do lamps. And in dark, dank places, you can certainly see all kinds of strange things in the shadows as creatures are coming forward, and somebody steps in front of the torchlight, and his shadow is now cast down the hallway, or what have you. And then, of course, there's uneven cobbles, broken walls, masonry, all kinds of stuff. So definitely use the terrain as you're going forward, both descriptively and interacting with the players themselves. Now, I rarely use the terrain. I rarely make them have checks for just kind of descriptive stuff, like when they jump down to the ground. I'm not going to have them bust their knee on a rock and then give them a minus dexterity, -1 on their dexterity or something like that. I'm just not going to do that. Maybe once in a blue moon. But what I do is I will describe, you fall to your knee to shoot the arrow. Your knee clocks right into a rock. You can feel its pain, jolts up through your leg, but take your shot anyways. That type of thing. It just kind of adds a level of descriptive text and confusion and just more, imagination. It just fuels the imagination a little bit for everybody involved. They probably forgot to put oil in the canning machine. Yeah, no kidding. Burned out their damn compressor. It's always something. Oh, that poor old binder. Theater of the mind, that Dr. Pepper. Yes, indeed. How's it going, Omut? That Dr. Pepper. Lord. Man, my phone has been ringing off the hook. I don't know why. I go through these periods. I don't know what it is. I get a lot of spam and then no spam. And then I get a lot of phone calls and then no phone calls. I have no idea what weird... I don't know what... The world's just weird anymore. It's weird and I don't like it. There you go. Get off my lawn. I think I'm going to have one of my upcoming BBEJs be named Dr. Pepper. There you go. Yeah, 42 Squirrels. I love making the terrain change to add dynamics to the fight too. Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. Last night I ran a game and it was just awesome. As Todd, he was playing a thief and he hides himself in the mud, and two guys ran right by him and failed their spot checks, and Todd managed to hide in the leaves and the mud and the dirt and all of this stuff. And it was just cool. And we came out of it, there was just debris flying in every which direction as he's just leaping forward, trying to break free of the mud and get into the fracas, which is a lot of fun. And I didn't really give him any penalties. It didn't really affect dice so much. I think the only terrain last night that did affect the combat specifically was I didn't allow Sarah to shoot. She couldn't shoot from behind the tree. She had to kind of step out and expose herself to shoot. So she didn't get the bonus armor class from hiding behind a tree to shoot her longbow. With a crossbow, maybe, but not the longbow. But beyond that, the terrain really doesn't impact the actual battle itself. It's really just descriptive stuff. Now, it can. Now, and that may be what you're talking about, 42. Certainly, if you run forward and you slide, you slide down a slope and into some mud and you get stuck in this mud and whatnot, that certainly can give you a minus on your initiative or whatever you want to do. But generally speaking, here what I'm talking about is just descriptive text, just to get everybody's stuff fueled up and put them somewhere on the battlefield in their minds that they can see. And of course, as I always say when you're describing terrain, just throw a couple of words out, like, sycamore tree or whatever, loblolly pine. And it doesn't matter if anyone at the table knows what that looks like. Just by saying it, you're going to conjure something in their mind, and they're going to have it. Because the important thing is that they have stepped into the terrain, and they are the ones experiencing it. Bifford, my lot have gotten up to the craggy ridge on A0. I've had them find one goblin crouched at the edge of a natural amphitheater that's been created by a ton of really large boulders. The goblin is apparently oblivious to the players and is watching the valley below. My plan is that they try to sneak up and capture him, but there are a half dozen goblins hiding in natural nooks and crannies underneath those boulders and will pop up. Oh, very cool. See, and that's a perfect example of it. You describe something that not only does it draw them in, but you can picture that in your mind. And just using words like boulders and amphitheater, you've got it. You've created this kind of image in my head. I don't know there's goblins there, but I know something's there. And I know this is where I'm going. I know what it looks like. And I can kind of envision crawling over them or what have you. And suddenly terrain is a huge part of the game. So it's very cool. It's always and will forever, next to equipment, be one of my absolute favorite. Tim's making fun of me because my shirt keeps coming out, so I'm just going to button that up. It's where the button's either too low or too high. I think there was a Seinfeld episode on that somewhere. In fact, I think the first episode of Seinfeld, he's talking about the button on his shirt because in the last episode of Seinfeld, when they're in jail, that's the conversation they have, is the button on the shirt. I think I read that somewhere. So 42 data, example, have fireballs make a tree fall, changing the map, forcing the players to reconnoiter their plans. Yeah, absolutely. I see, that's badass. And I will sometimes do that with spells. Obviously, there's a spell effect, but it can be anything. I mean, someone can swing, roll a 9 to hit, they miss their target, cut through a branch, and a tree limb falls onto it. A huge favorite thing of mine is getting weapons stuck in armor or a tree, anything like that, to just kind of make the whole thing, make terrain part of it, make terrain part of the fun. But also critical to the whole not using props is creating confusion in everybody's mind, so that they're a little bit taken aback by what's going on. When you're looking at miniatures on a battle map and there's trees here and there, everybody can say, no, I have 2 hexes between me and this tree, or that rock is over there. See, that's 3 movement segments away, or whatever the bloody crap they're saying. And you don't want any of that. When you're doing non-prop based role-playing combat, you really just want a loose interpretation of everything, so that you've got latitude to mess up and you've got latitude to allow things to unfold like you want them to in your descriptive text. That's actually a perfect segue into number 3, tricks of the trade, but we're not gonna segue anywhere. We're gonna lumber right into number 2, which is everything. Everyone sees it differently. So, what is that? A dodo bird? What do you got on the panel there, Chuck? There you go. One of my favorites was fighting during fire season. The players had to account for starting. Oh, now that's badass. I've never thought about that. That's cool. So they're out wherever in the wilderness and it's already dry. They throw a fireball, or even swing a blade and hit a rock and spark something. It's a duck or a rabbit. Yeah, I don't know what that's the strangest looking duck I've ever seen. But it's a great idea. I love it. See, that's really cool because, and this is what you're talking about, is the terrain changes by their actions. And that even creates more chaos, which is just absolutely great. Steve taught my CK these outdoor terrains, heavy games, and now we can never get out of it. Yeah, dude, I love forests so much. Every time I take my party out of my game or whatever, out of the forest, I feel naked. I don't know what's going on. What are these plains about? I don't understand the mountains. I absolutely love the forest. I don't know what it is. There's so many things I think that you can do in the forest. There's so many distractions. There's so much. But the descriptive stuff is really heavy there too. So very cool. Well, is that a duck or a rabbit? Yeah, there you go. So everybody sees it differently. Very good. Is it a rabbit? Oh, it is. I see what you're doing now. I see the rabbit. All right. Chuck, you out-clevered me. You out-clevered me by a long stretch. That's not much to brag about. So, ask Tim. Being more clever than me is no mean feat. So, but enjoy that's very cool. So I see the rabbit now. It needs a little like a mouth or something, and it would be. Anyways, so everyone does see it differently. So our rabbit, Chuck Duck here. So what I'm talking about here, when you're describing what's going on, so what I try to do is every 2 or 3 melee rounds, give or take, nothing's written in stone. Usually when I see confusion spreading, I will pick one of the players. I used to describe the whole thing to everybody. This is what's going on, but I'll do that a little bit, maybe once or twice during the battle. But now what I do is I'll pick one of the players and I'll describe to them what they see. And this has two sides to it. One, you engage that player directly, and that person now is, one-on-one getting the attention, and they're going to pay attention to what's going on. So that's really good. That brings them into the combat even more if they were out of it, or more if they were into it. But it also creates this kind of voyeuristic thing. As everyone, it's kind of human nature. I talk about this in the thing. It's kind of human nature to watch other people. I think it's what we do. I think it's kind of a biologic mechanism that allows us to learn things. So we like to watch what other humans do. And so if you're sitting at a table and the GM is describing X to Y, then you're kind of, but that description includes what's happening to you. It kind of draws you in this voyeuristic fashion, and makes you kind of want to listen more than perhaps you would have if there's just kind of an overall picture being drawn. For instance, if I'm sitting there and I'm talking to Sarah's character like I was last night and describing to her what she's seeing, and I'd say very, poignantly, Todd, what is it? I can't remember his character's name. It's Try. I think Try is doing XYZ. And then suddenly Todd's sitting there in kind of a daze, but he hears his name and he thinks, oh, so now he's watching. So when you're describing the combat that's going on, try to pick somebody and describe what's happening to everyone, including monsters on the battlefield. Be brief. You don't have to be, you don't have to exaggerate, describe it. You really don't want to ever describe anything longer than 2 or 3 minutes. But be brief, describe it, throw some names out there from other people sitting at the table, their characters minimally. And just hopefully that'll drag everybody into it and give everybody a somewhat better idea of what actually is going on, where they are, where the enemy is. You're never going to be able to hook them all in. People listen, some people don't listen, some people only listen when they're directly addressed. But if you can keep kind of painting this picture from different perspectives, it has the same kind of effect we talked about in the previous trick. It creates a little bit of latitude in where you can go awry if you do something a little bit wrong, or if they don't understand something, you simply can cover it. This is what Sarah is seeing. This is not what you're seeing. That type of thing. So you can actually cloak your chaos, cloak the chaos of the game, and cloak the chaos of the actual combat by singling somebody out and describing everything to it. So that's a huge something I learned only in the last few years, because I used to do these broad, every 2 or 3 rounds I do this broad description of everything. I've kind of backed that off. Do the broad description of everything, but focus in on one person that I'm talking to. All right, so let's hard charge it into where we should have segued earlier, is vague distances. So this comes up a lot in my game. One, because I can't do math very well, and I don't want to. It's huge. I just don't want to do it. But you've got diameters of spells, you've got distances that people are running, you've got ranges of missile weapons, and all three of those things can really, if you take too much time and dive into them too much, they can really wreck a game. I shouldn't say wreck a game. That's not the right word. They can really slow a game down or interrupt combat in a huge sort of way. Hold on. Let's see what Obadiah says. I have started experimenting a bit with getting the players to describe some scenes. For example, it might be their family home or their village, or even sometimes to describe the visual manifestation of their magic effect. It gives them some impact to the scene. Now, that's a great idea, especially that last one. That last one can really play into the game every time there's a combat. They may not always have recourse to describe their family home, but describing what their magic item's doing, or even what they are doing, I try to encourage my players to describe what kind of swings they're doing. Is it an overhand? Is it left-handed? Are you whatever it is? Anything to do like you're saying, you can then use it against them. Yeah, of course. But like you said, it engages them, and that's really a cool thing. And it actually lets because a lot of players obviously have a lot of imagination, and it lets their imagination flow too. So that's a great idea. Absolutely great idea. So back to distances. Yeah, so I try to be vague on all of these things, whether it's diameter, range, or movement. Let's talk about movement first, so movement is kind of, it's written down, right? In Castles and Crusades, a human's going to run 30 feet around, and a dwarf's going to run 20 feet around, and if you go into a full charge, you can go 4 times that for a certain amount of time. So there you go. So you're going to be running 40 feet or 120 feet around, blah, blah, blah. And then you get into this thing of, I'm going to move, and this is on the VTT and on the battle maps and that stuff, I'm going to be with 30 feet around, each square is worth 10 feet, I can move 3 squares. Or 2 squares or 12 squares or whatever it happens to be when you're doing your mess, doing the thing. But what that does, one, it's not really realistic. Nobody can run, particularly in combat, particularly with adrenaline running, particularly with terrain encountered in there or countered in there, factored in there. No one's going to be able to run the exact same kind of rate of speed for any length of time. It's just not one you're going to tire out pretty quick. So the movement factor should be kind of looked at as a baseline that you go off of. And I'm always doing, you run a little bit faster, you run a little bit slower, something slows you down, you sprain your ankle just a little bit, you step in a hole, it hurts your back. You know, whatever it is that cuts their movement rate or gives their movement rate. Now, conversely with that, I try to not give exact distances. How far is the orc from me? 150 to 200 feet. Can I figure out if it's any closer? No, you can't. It's 150 to 200 feet. It's somewhere around in there. The orc's moving a little bit. You're moving a little bit. Wind's blowing. There's an odd smell coming from behind you. There's trees between you and the orc. You can't quite tell the whole thing. There's a little bit of haze, too. There's a lightning bug over to your right, causing distraction. It's 150 to 200 feet. Now, I might have a better idea of how far the orc is, but I don't really even pinpoint that either because, and this gets into the next thing, if I want them to be able to shoot the arrow without penalty, then I need them to be able to do that. So I don't want to pin it down. So when they shoot, okay, you definitely don't factor in the long distance penalty. Just do the medium range penalty, and you're good to go. And so it gives you a broad room, a lot of latitude to err on the side of the characters or err on the side of the monsters, whatever it is that you need to happen. It's just a good way. It's just a good way to control the chaos. As soon as you get exact, as soon as you iron this stuff out, this is where everybody is, then that's where everybody is. And if you know there's 8 hexes between 2 of them, there's 8 hexes between 2 of them. That's just all there is to it, especially if you're doing, if a computer is moving your stuff for you. I move 30 feet to the right, what have you. How do you rule distances for spells or missile attacks for the players when using vague? So that's when the players love physical. Yes, so spells get a little bit of special thing. But you're right. Players really, really love to know exactly. And like I'll use last night as a good example. So Chris and Sarah were shooting their bows, and they were actually at about 120 feet, which they both had long bows or short bows. No, she had a long bow. He had a short bow, and he was going to get a -6, I think. And I couldn't abide that. He wasn't going to. He's first off. He's not going to be able to hit anything. So I didn't. I ratcheted that down to a medium range and ratcheted hers too. Because I just described it as you're roughly 100 feet. Take your shot, no penalty. I think they had a penalty at the first, but they closed. They were going to have a penalty, and they closed a little bit closer. So that's just on me. It's just something I kind of I do the way I want it, the way I want them to be able to behave, or the way I want their dice rolls to play out. Because a -6 is a huge 6 off of a first level character. Now, had it been higher level, and this was an orc that is a 9th level character shooting it, I probably would have gone the other direction and said, yeah, it's just over your long range, so take your shot. But I specifically tell them what the penalty is going to be. So that's how I do missile weapons, and it's really a case by case where I want it to come out. I mean, these characters, last night, to give you the big picture, there's 5 of them, and there's a thief, an arcane thief, a seeker, an archer, and a ranger. I had been an illusionist, but they don't have a lot of ability to fight. The encounter that they were going to roll up against was 14 bandits. So I didn't want it to be too top heavy. I split the bandits up so that they could hit them in waves, and then I, adjudicated the penalties away when they started shooting, just to make it a little bit more a little bit more playable. Now, spells is a wholly different thing, because spells are really kind of determined on the exact diameter of this is going to cover all of this. Now, and this is what we'll talk about in Trick of the Trade number 5, sort of, but I've talked about before. I always describe my battles as very fluid. Nobody's standing still. There's no two guys doing like, this, like the Black Knight does in the Holy Grail, where they're both kind of standing there fighting. Everybody's moving. Everybody's moving to the left, to the right, pushing forward, pushing back, and scattering that direction. So there's this constant flow of movement, and it's more so with the monsters because there's more of them, unless you're in a contained area. So when they cast spells and they do their diameter, I try if they want to break out rules and whatnot, I don't stop it. But what I try to do is say, okay, you're going to get 5 orcs in that fireball. Go ahead and roll me some damage. And for the most part, and it may just be my players, but I've done this a little bit at conventions. No one really cares. They just want to know that they're going to get somebody with it. And then they'll ask, well, can I throw that so that I don't hurt anyone in the party? Yes, you're smart enough to do that. You don't have to pinpoint it on the map where you're going to do it. Because as soon as you do that, of course, everybody, now you're all kind of pinned down. And you're going to be discussing the whole thing for the next 10 minutes as you figure out where to go. And in all reality, in combat, that's not going to happen. You're not going to be able to sit there and say, I want to get, my mortar round right there. What you do is you shoot the mortar round, you guess the range, you shoot the mortar round, it lobs into the thing, and if it's off to the left or off to the right, you adjust your mortar tube, fire again. And that's sort of what, in spells is going to be the same thing. You're not really going to be able to say, the mage's not going to be able to go, that's 62 feet, if I do it, kind of hard to do. So in reality, I describe the whole thing as this massively fluid, constantly moving battlefield in which you can't quite center where you want, but you centered it here and you got 5 of the orcs and avoided hitting the ranger, so you're good to go. Roll your damage. And that's kind of how I do it. Now, again, I will back off on that if players, because spellcasters are a little special. This is their big moment, right? A fighter gets to swing every round, but a spellcaster only has 1 or 2 big spells that they get to nuke the map with. So if they're very particular about it and want to kind of map it all out, I'll stop, and we're going to map it all out. Otherwise, I just kind of wing it, just like I do the distances. It's 40, 50 feet, you got to close, it's 50, 70 feet between that and whatever. You're just inside a short range, that type of thing, and then the same kind of goes with magic. You could allow them to pause in the comic to pace it out to get the exact measurement. That would be tough. Now, I will say this, though. I'm sitting here and saying that some people, the mage can't, blah, blah, blah. That's not entirely true. I guarantee you get an experienced mortar tube platoon or squad, mortar squad, whatever they're called. These guys are going to know ranges after about their first, second, third contact with the enemy. They're going to have a pretty good idea of ranges. And anyone even who shoots, so if you're an archer, you're going to kind of know what 100 yards is, and you learn that stuff, or you die. So it's just, there's probably more truth in someone's ability to determine the exact range that I'm saying. But for the RPG purposes and for the purposes of not bogging the game down with a bunch of rules discussions and diameters and radiuses and all of that, I kind of just broaden it somewhat and tell them what the fireball does and who it hits. Nowadays, everyone is at least 6 feet apart. That's right. With social distancing, spells are out the door. They're just not going to affect anybody. You're going to get 1 orc at best. So there you go. It sounds very, they're crazy. Decimus is crazy. When they pitched this party to me, I was thinking they're going to get annihilated. So I'm trying to do a town adventure. I'm not very good at town adventures. I can't describe trees. But and of course we got out of the town last night. It's an interesting party. The illusionist is out, replaced by a ranger, which is good. But he used a bow last night. It was an interesting encounter. We're going to see how this plays out, especially with the Arcane Thief. And the Seeker is it's in the Adventurer's backpack, for those who don't know. And it has no particular, it's a Castles and Crusades character class. It has no particular skill per se, other than its ability to adapt to the situation at hand. In Castles and Crusades, you have attribute checks, and you get primes. You get 2 primes if you're a demi-human, 3 if you're a human. And the Seeker gets all primes. They can only have 3 a day if they're human, or 2 a day if they're demi-human. but they get to choose which ones. Then you can have a strength for a prime on Monday, and on Tuesday you can have dexterity or whatever. You just get to choose it for the day. So it really gives you, I mean, it makes you very liquid in multiple different situations, but you don't have any particular skill feature. And the character, Laura's playing the Seeker, and she didn't roll good goals. She has no armor. She's got a good blade, but so she's got a low armor class with no bonus to hit like a fighter has or a extra whatever the archer has or whatever. So it's an interesting. I don't know. This is an interesting party. We'll see. We'll see if it makes it. Add 50 fire for effect. Yeah, there you go. You mean your mages bother trying to keep the fighters out of the fireball? Sometimes. They sound exceptionally considerate. Yeah. Commander, if Davis is playing the spellcaster, he does not care. He doesn't care if he kills you. It's coming at you. All right, thanks. I'm glad I got that across. I know I babble sometimes, so I didn't know if I explained that. All right, so let's wander into, what are we doing? Tricks of the trade number 4. So this probably is it. This is cheating to do as an actual trick of the trade, since I think I put this in like every 3 GM tricks of the trade. Just bend the rules. What did I specify here? Let's see. When it comes to battle, this is the most important on missile weapons and impact spells. Give it some latitude. Characters. Oh, that's actually what I was talking about with the ranges. So it's this kind of blended with the other one. I guess I kind of blended both of these tricks. So when you're kind of broadening your ranges on things and not being specific on how far something is away or how close it is or how long they got to get there, and to kind of regress last night, Mac and Lara's characters they hid in the bushes 700 feet away from the rest of the party as the party attacked. Now, they waited like 4 rounds before they felt they could run forward or should run forward. But technically, in Castles and Crusades, 700 feet, you're going to move at a full charge. You're moving 120 feet around. That's what, 6 rounds? Is that right? Yeah, it's about 6 rounds, maybe 7 rounds before they're going to be in the combat. Well, 7 rounds was not. No one was going to live that long. So I just kind of fast forwarded a little bit. I just kind of moved it a little bit forward. And so they got there in about 5 rounds. I bend the rules a little bit, and I changed the distance a little bit just to make the game a little bit more fun and a little bit more playable, and not to wreck the campaign just off of something as sad and small as 200 feet of described road or what have you. And, there's a good example. Just using the word road, I didn't even think about it last night, but they were moving up the road, so their speed actually would perhaps be faster. I'm not sure if the CKG addresses that. I think it does. That you move faster on a road than over terrain. Maybe it's double. I know horses do. So there's probably even rules that you can pull out to kind of support your bending the rules of things. So anytime you're running the combat, bend the rules a little bit to allow things to work a little bit better or a little bit worse than they normally would. And the nice thing about going either way with this, and I've talked about this before on the Tricks of the Trade, if you actually will rule in the player's favor more often than not, 6 out of 10 times, when something comes up, rule in their favor. And I'm not saying give up the game or change whatever, whatever. Just, okay, yeah, that your character can do that. That's fine. It's only going to work this time. Probably not next, but you're good to go. You actually will create a table. You'll have people at the table that are more than willing, when you roll against them, that they're okay with it. Because they instinctively know that you're not there just to hammer them all the time. No, you can't do that. No, that doesn't work. No, that doesn't work. It's just a better way of doing it. And when you get into this bend the rules things, you certainly yes, the panels are awesome today. The next one is my favorite. We're fixing to get to it. So bend the rules a little bit in their favor more often than not, and you'll create a little bit more just fun, but also engage them some. But you'll create a little bit more confusion, because now with distance is not pinpointed down, with spells affecting, you're really not sure where the spell, the tree blocked some of the fireball, what have you. Whatever it is that is going on, you're creating even a little bit more chaos, a little bit more confusion, which is really where you want it to be when you're doing these theater of the mind type things, because you want it fluid, and you don't want anyone to feel like they can pin you down or that they need pinned down on the battlefield. They need to take care of the 2 or 3 feet around them, or the spell out or the range, and enjoy the combat. And that leads us to the last one, my favorite panel for the day. Personalize it. So that's our fearless Chuck there with his Viking helmet on. So enjoy that panel while I drone on. So personalizing it this is probably one of the things I do the most and enjoy the most. And my descriptions will frequently become unrealistic if you're looking at actual damage, hit points, level, and all this type of stuff. But I love to do a lot of bloody damage to equipment and flesh, bones, running characters through, running monsters through. The fight last night, Todd was rolling amazingly, and he slashed one dude's thigh, it cut down to the bone, scraping. And I described how he could feel the blade bone scraping against the guy's thigh bone up through and in Todd's very arm, and he stabbed another guy through a guy ran past him and he backstabbed him, and his blade went through the thigh and through the lower buttocks and up and into the groin area, and the guy gave this blood-curdling scream. An arrow passed by one of the characters, nicked the forehead. It was a miss, but it nicks your forehead, this type of things. Anything that, any kind of, and this, you want to do this to everyone at the table. Laura ran forward and using her longsword cut into an archer, or an arbalist, a crossbowman, but cut through his crossbow and slashed through him. Chuck, I feel like you're going to say something. I'm seeing your picture out of the corner of my eye, and I feel like you're going to say something to me. And she cut through the crossbow, the haft of the crossbow. It's not the haft. What is that? I don't know. Crossbow. Whatever it is. Just anything like that to personalize it, and you want it to happen to each of the players. And their characters, and also conversely the monsters that they're fighting. So there's just a lot of imagery coming at them that they can kind of focus on and latch onto. Fluid shifting combat, yes, absolutely. But it really, and this has multiple purposes. One, of course, you're engaging and it's fun and descriptive, and you're bringing people to the theater with gusto. But also it distracts people at the table from thinking too much about trying to map out where everybody is. Now, you're going to have players that are going to do that regardless, and that's okay. That's some people's style. Don't crimp it too much. I've been guilty of that in the past, not catering to people who want to kind of know exactly where everything is, and I try to do that a little bit more. But when you do this kind of nonstop descriptive text and slashing of flesh and flying of arrows and knocking helmets off or what have you, it personalizes it in a huge way, so that player can suddenly see that when that arrow brushes their cheek, they suddenly see the arrow going past them and know this is really not really real, but this is more real than roll, the arrow misses, you take your swing type thing. Do you let the character describe their hit without letting it do any special effect, of course, or do you, as a GM, handle the impact of all the blows? I generally handle the impact of all the blows only because the players don't know the amount of damage they're doing. So they might do 10 points of damage and think it's a huge blow, and the fighter that they're fighting has 60 hit points. So it's really not that huge of a blow, so you kind of got to mitigate it less than, a devastating blow. So then you get up, because if you let the players do it, you get into this kind of zone of where they might take it too far, or not far enough, honestly. I mean, they could go the other direction, but I do all the time encourage them to say things like, I swing at the leg, even if it's not a called shot. And I'll ask them, is that a called shot? No, it's not. I'm just swinging at the leg. Great. And Mac Golden is the past master of that. He and I've been gaming. All of these guys and I've been gaming for decades, but Mac knows that's kind of how I play, so he does it as well. He'll try to do things on the battlefield just with, this is what I'm going to try to do. I'm going to swing the blade and try to knock the mace out of his hand. I'm going to grab his arm. I'm going to interfere with his leg, whatever it is. And that feeds me so that I can create, whatever. That just gives me fuel to create what's going to happen based on the dice rolls as they hit the table. So generally speaking, Commander, I manage it, but I encourage everybody to try to participate in it as well. Or the teeth too much. Yeah, it's a lot. Those teeth are a lot. I like when players describe what they want to do. I paint the outcome. Yeah, that's exactly, absolutely, 42. That's exactly right. I see Murdo. Thanks. I have to leave early. Great stuff. Thanks, Murder. Yeah, it's almost 5. I think we got to bug out here soon. Hey, are we doing this? Did we make 50? I wasn't paying any attention whatsoever. I think I just droned on far too much this time. But did we make 50? Chuck, Tim, anybody? Let's see. What was my last little postscript today? And remember, if it becomes too confusing and someone finally shouts, "I don't know what is going on," just retort, "Despite your confusion, the orc is coming at you with a wicked-looking meat cleaver. What do you do?" Yeah, and that's it at the rub. So in this, all of this stuff. No, so we're at 30. So no raffle today. All of this stuff that we're talking about today creates a lot of confusion at the table. It's going to be difficult for everybody to kind of envision what's going on and to know what's going on. The important thing is that you know what's going on, and you create enough fog of war, enough confusion through descriptive text, being a little bit, bending your rules and not so particular on your ranges that nobody can actually pinpoint you with anything. So that's a good thing. Fog of war, confusion of combat, it's all good. And this actually, doing it this way will help you kind of break free of the props. Now, I like props. I do use them. Obviously, we're just using video right now. We haven't even gotten to the VTT stuff. But, we haven't migrated to Fantasy Grounds yet. It is constantly, it's a discussion every post-game text thread, whether we're having it right now. I can see the little things popping up on the phone. But, I don't know. So I think that's all we got for this week. I feel like I'm just droning on at this point to no end or any purpose. Send one of those to Colorado, please. We've got such an extreme... we've got a lot of water this year. You can have a raffle for the amount of viewers per episode. Then you may run into the problem of having 1,000 people show up. Yeah, that might be an issue. That might not be a good idea, Great Pegs. I know what Tim and Chuck are angling at. We want to start thinking about partnership over here on Twitch, so we need to get an average of 75 viewers or some such business. Minimally, we need to get it up in order to appeal that and see if they'll actually let us have the partnership they'll sometimes let folks do. But all good. I'm waiting for storms to cool things off here, but not doing. Yeah, we were supposed to get a lot of rain and got none of it, so I got to go water the yard at some point. But all right, so this was a fun one, guys. That's it for Jim's Tricks of the Trade number 59. I think I'm gonna wander off, try to find some food, and call it an evening, and wait for my new air compressor to come in so that I can put oil in it, Commander Pete. I'll put oil in it this time, and in all fairness, it had oil. It just burnt through it over 4 or 5 years, or however old the damn thing is. But yes, certainly maintaining your equipment is the number one part of having your equipment. So, yeah, we know what I say. All right. Thanks, everybody, for coming by. We sure appreciate it. Give us a follow if you have not. And we will be back. I will be back on Tuesday for Ask Me Anything, 4 to 5 o'clock next Tuesday. And again, Jim's Tricks of this Trade 160. And for 160, I'm going to pull out my 5 most influential RPG books. And that's what we're going to talk about next week. Expect a little We Warriors and Palladium in there. And we're not going to do any of TLG's material, just stuff that influenced me coming up as a gamer. That'll be next week at 4 o'clock. Thursday, whatever day that would be. But join me also for Ask Me Anything on Tuesday. You all have a great rest of your week and have a fine weekend, and we will talk to you and see you soon.